during those activities, well, I'm assuming and hope that during some of those activities that we're talking while we're doing them. But it's about, and I think a lot of times when you're doing those type of activities and taking place, and, and really spending and investing time, you're really bonding emotionally. I mean, I think that's one of the things we haven't talked a lot about that yet here tonight. But we know again in generalities that women are a little more emotional than guys. But let's not, guys. We like to be emotional, and we're emotional creatures too. Let's not forget that. We don't necessarily, it's not macho to talk about, the fact that I'm really emotionally connected to my significant other, but that's important to us too. So in those times where you're sharing those moments and taking part, you're connecting emotionally, and if you're feeding that, a lot of times that just translates into conversation.
Right. Let's talk about those deeper emotional levels. I like the subtitle of your book. Conversation, communicate on a higher level, connect on a deeper emotional level. Can you explain a little bit about why you picked that subtitle and how we can apply that in our relationship?
Absolutely, because we know, and I know this specifically because I've lived it and been through it, as your relationship matures, and we've talked about it earlier in the show, the communication kind of has a tendency to slide downhill a little bit. Well, in order to communicate on a higher level, what do you need to do to be successful at that? You have to spend focused time with your significant other talking about issues, emotions, and topics that are important to that person. If you're doing that, and if you're listening, and we talked earlier again about being a good listener, if you're really in the moment, staying focused, listening to what's being said, that ultimately leads to an emotional connection. And the more that we really understand the other person, the less we're talking to our coworkers about what's going on in our relationship, and the more we can't wait to get home because we really want to. In fact, I joke with some of my coworkers, some of the people I hang around with and different folks that I interact with. It's like, I love going home. I love it. I'm in a fantastic relationship. I absolutely get jacked to go home. A lot of times people are like, I don't want to go home. Well, that's an issue. But connecting on that deeper emotional level allows you to really enjoy your relationship at its maximum point.
Fantastic. So what if you've never done that before? How does one begin to open? How do you know it's safe? Yeah. So what's the first step in this typical just getting to that deeper level? Like, why isn't love enough is probably the subtext to that.
I'll say this: how many people walk up and just jump into a pool without putting their toe in it first to test the water? And you talked about it. You have to, if you're a little insecure about it, or you don't have a tremendous amount of confidence. We always talk and we teach our folks baby steps. You have to understand that in order to be successful in a relationship, you have to open up. You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And for some folks, that's difficult. And working through that process, you have to tell your significant other, hey, look, here's what I've had trouble with in the past, but what I'd like to do with you is start. So I want to talk about X topic. And I want you to really embrace that, and if you encourage that person to keep giving and come out a little bit more and more, then we all know positive reinforcement is a great tool in really inducing behavior. So the more you listen and hear and feel and take in what that person is trying to do, the more they're going to open up to you, and that's where that deeper connection comes in.
Right, and I guess we suggest that if you're in a really nice place in your relationship now, that you begin those deeper emotional conversations now. But there are plenty of couples that are kind of right on the edge, and there's bickering and all sorts of things going on. How can we create a safe place when we've had a history of running away with different issues and the you always, you nevers? How, when you're not getting along, can you begin this process? It seems a little trickier.
It is, and you almost, I like where you're going, and I'm going to take it a step further, because we call that communication jail. When you get to that point where, you've either been bickering or you can't quite get to a point where you can bring something up that needs to be talked about, either because you don't feel comfortable with it or it's going to end up in an argument. And we're not afraid, and we tell folks all the time, if you really are at that point and you can't move forward, then seek out some professional help. Do not be afraid to go and sit down with a professional. And in our society, somewhere along the lines, it became a bit of a stigma. But counselors and professional folks that are trained to sit down with you and really let you get those issues out on the table and work through them. I mean, one topic, one problem